All right, take the wheel.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'll start with introducing myself. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so I am Kriti Faujdar, and currently I'm a master's student in CICS, and I'm graduating in December 2020. Um, so basically here are my contact details. I am putting these here because this is a Q&A session, and if I am not able to answer all your questions here, you can anytime email me or ping me and just give me some time and I'll respond. And if it's anything important, just say that it's important and please reply soon. So I wanted to say this in case I forget at the end. Can you go to next slide? Okay, so one of the last week I and Dhruv was talking, and one of the things he asked me to talk about is that why I chose to be PM. So it's a, I mean, relatively long journey because I think all of you are undergrad students and you are in this PM club. So I think at least you know that you want to be a PM or you are considering being a PM. With me, it was completely different. So I completed my Bachelor's of Engineering in Computer Science in 2011. And after that, I joined Indian Space Research Organization in India as research scientist. And there I got the opportunity to work in various roles. So I worked in various software development projects. No project was very large because most of the software we use there were running mostly on the 100 or 200 computers. So one thing that I don't have any experience of is working any large scale software. And so also along with developing softwares, I also worked as flight manager and product manager for various satellite launches. So these experiences were one of the reasons I started considering either being a project manager or program manager. But the thing is, I didn't know what to do. Or so in the space industry, things work in a very I should say conservative way. So there are certain procedures that you follow. You can't just change your teams. You can't just start working on any project because there are a lot of things are at stake, and projects, when you're talking about a satellite or a rocket, things are working on a very huge scale. So you just can't take any risk or just don't change your field like directly. So I was feeling stuck and I was feeling that I'm not able to learn anything new. I was not able to decide how to move forward in my career, and I decided to pursue my master's because at that time I could think of that as the only way that I'll be able to explore more. And I wanted to go into data science. That was something that I didn't know because when I was pursuing my undergrad, kind of no one talked about machine learning or data science. So I thought, okay, why not learn something new and then decide what I want to do next. So I joined my master's and I started learning a lot of cool things that I think you already know. And then I was interviewing for internships, and I was giving all kinds of role the chance. I applied for PM internships, for SD internships, and ML engineer, data scientist, whatever the role that I think that I could explore. And I ended up getting into Amazon as SD and then Microsoft as PM. And how I chose to intern at Microsoft was basically I thought that internship is the time when I can actually explore if I want to be a PM or not. And if I decide that I don't want to be a PM, I can just interview for SD or ML engineer again. And for full time, I can just join that. Yeah, you can go to next slide. No problem. So that's the reason I decided to give the PM internship a chance. And of course, the things were like didn't go as I expected. My internship was virtual, so I didn't get the chance to interact with people as much as I wanted to. But still, I managed to talk to various PMs over the Microsoft, and um, eventually I realized that I'm liking this role. And one of the reasons for for that was that I realized that I love coding, but I don't want to code all the time. And when I am a PM, I can choose to code if I want to, but along with that, I can interact with multiple teams. I can actually design a project from basic. And I think that was something that I really liked about PM, was that I get to work on something from the scratch. Of course, that doesn't happen if you're like joining as a new PM. I mean, you'll be given a small feature to work on, but I think as you grow up in your field, you get to handle a whole project. So, sorry, product. So I think that was my incentive for choosing the PM role as full time. So I'll just give few tips about resume or interview preparation, and then I'll take your questions. And I think with that, we can discuss a lot of things about my decisions, or how do you want to decide, and like what you should do in deciding your career choices and other things. So there are few basic things. I think you would have heard a lot of common things about resume preparation. So there are few points that I would like to highlight. One is that when you do a small Google search about resume preparation, you get a lot of resources. So basically just looking here and there and getting confused, it's better to just go to the CICS website and look at their resume checklist. It's actually a very good resource. And the second point that you should consider is, so usually when we prepare our resumes, we just write the descriptions about our projects, but eventually what it comes to is that what impact your project is creating. So if you can quantify your project, that would be a very good thing to put on resume. So sometimes we think, I mean, when we are writing about a project, we think, okay, it's not doing anything specific, and we just can't figure out how to write it in terms of like percentage or time or whatever metric we want. So for that, when I was interviewing at Microsoft, one of the interviewers helped me figure that out. So basically, he asked me a question that, what do you think is your most impactful project? And I spoke about a project that I did in ISRO, which was not actually on my resume. It was basically about something about report keeping. And I just said that people were having help. I mean, they were having a hard time getting those reports because they used to email or maybe just walk to some other person's desk and ask them. So what he told me was that take a step back and think, when you were walking from your cubicle to the other person cubicle, how much time it took. And with that, he helped me quantify the impact. And I figured that using my project, on an average, every person was saving 30 minutes a day. So maybe you can use this technique or something similar to quantify impact of your project. I think that would help you. And third thing is that get your resume reviewed by either CICS career advisors or your peers. You can do that in your club meetings or as informally as you want. I mean, it's up to you, but get your resume reviewed, because when we look at our documents, we think that it's looking perfect, but when someone else sees it, they might give you a feedback. I mean, you'll get a different perspective that you were not thinking of. So you should definitely consider that. And also another thing I would like to suggest is that if you're applying for different roles, then modify your resume accordingly. So one good thing is to so what I'm going to say, it takes a lot of time. So I would say that if you can prepare that in advance, that would be better. You can like create 3 separate resume templates, one for data science, one for PM, and one for SD. I think these will be the 3 main roles you all will be applying for. So if you keep these templates ready, when you're applying for a job, you can just read the job description and change the keywords based on that. Honestly, it's a very time-consuming process. I would honestly say that I kind of never did it, but I feel I should have done it. So this is something you can just do in advance and keep it ready. So just take care of that. And next is, okay, sorry, I wrote the name of the wrong book. I wanted to write Cracking the PM Interview. So please, I'll modify it later. So I would say that if you're preparing for the PM interview, just read that book end to end. There are other resources like Decode and Conquer. I actually never read it, but I heard good reviews about it. But what I read is Cracking the PM Interview. I finished that book in like 4 or 5 days before my Microsoft interview, because I mean, when I got the call, the interview was due in like a week. And what this book gave me was I got the idea that how my interview could go. So the truth is, PM interviews are basically very subjective to the interviewer. I'll actually explain you how my interview go, and then you will understand what I wanted to say. I'll come to that later. But I would say that read this book end to end, and you will get some idea about the interview. And second thing is, don't stop coding. So something that I did, I decided to become a PM, and then I kind of stopped coding since coding. When I say coding, I mean lead code or similar kind of things. Since August, I have not even coded a single question. I would say don't do that, because even in the PM interviews, they ask you the coding questions. My one round of my interview was the coding round. So you should know that. And third is that you can practice interview questions on this website. This is the pminterview.com. I think the Decode and Conquer book is released by them, but this gives you this is like, I don't know if you have checked it ever or not, but if you open it, it pops up a question on the screen and it gives you some time to speak. And I think this is something you can do with your friends, or you can actually in one of your meetings, you can just do this as exercise. That would help each of you. And if you like listen to the multiple answers to the same question, you will improve your answers too. And the next thing, which is very important, is that the questions that you will be asked in PM interviews, they won't be those questions won't be, basically there won't be any right or wrong answer. It mostly depends on what interviewer is looking for. So I think just be confident and keep asking clarifying questions. I think same goes with any interview, but especially in PM interviews, you should try to read the mind of your interviewer, that you should see their expression and think, okay, I think I'm going on the right track. So that is one thing. And next is, you will be asked the product design questions. So they will maybe say something like, I am giving you a very trivial example, that maybe design a remote control for a blind person. So, and when someone asks you such questions, because I mean, if you have not lived with a blind person, you might not know what kind of problems they face on a day-to-day basis. You can just think of like generally, okay, they can't see, so they won't be able to see the numbers and whatever. So, I mean, this was the question someone asked me and I was very confused, and it took me some time to organize my thoughts. So what I do is, like, even in the interviews, I just ask them, can I use whiteboard? And I just start writing something. It helps me organize my thoughts. So maybe if you are stuck in answering the questions, maybe try that. If that works for you. Can you go to next slide? Yeah, and this is something very important I would like to tell you, is that just, I don't know in what years all of you are, but if you have the chance to do more than one internship, I would say that, like, try different roles and then decide. So for example, now if you can do 2 internships, maybe do 1 PM internship or 1 SG or 1 data science if you get the chance. And then this way you will get to know, because when you hear from someone, you don't know what's going on. You just hear their experiences. So it would be better if you can experiment on your own and then choose one role. That's true that you can eventually change, but it's never easy if you try to change your field once you join the job. So if you can do multiple internships, doing the multiple roles, and then choose one. I think that's it that I want to say. So you can ask your questions.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for the presentation. That was really insightful. Um, One question I had was, could you talk more about your role at ISRO, at the Indian Space Research Organization, and what was the transition? You mentioned that you were like a software developer, then you were a project manager, and how were those two roles and when you transitioned to either one of them?
I mean, okay, how was it when I was in ISRO, like transitioning to those roles? Okay, so honestly, in ISRO, it's not like that you are software developer at one time and then you transition to PM. It's like all the roles go in parallel. I mean, it was hard for me to explain it on the resume, so I just made it sound like it was few years I was a software developer, then few years I was a project manager. So it's basically when I say I was a software developer, so it's like along with my I was okay. I'll explain you what kind of center I was working in. I was working in a center where my work, like where our center's work was to control the satellites that Indian space industry launched. So basically, we handled it from their launch to their end of life. So the main work was to control the daily operations of those satellites. So basically maintain their health round the clock. So along with doing that work, they assign you some projects. So you have your like day job that you're doing when you are controlling the satellite, and along with that, you are given some projects where you will be developing satellites. And when there is a launch, as you spend like 1 or 2 years there, and then they start putting you in the launch when there is a new satellite is going to be launched, you just work as a flight manager or project manager for that 1 month. And then that time you'll be relieved from all your duties and you'll be working on that role round the clock. Okay, that's the key point, the round the clock. So basically, one of the good things was that at one time I was kind of handling multiple roles, and I was able to, I mean, on one day I knew that, okay, this is the thing I don't like much, but this I like. Okay, I'm trying to explain it in a very wrong way. I mean, if you are a project manager and a software developer in like 2 months of time, you will know that you enjoyed working as a project manager more than you enjoyed working as a software developer. I mean, it was that kind of thing. So I think basically you're going to go in the IT industry. It's going to be very different here than there, because I think things are more systematic here and the work is more defined here than it's in ISRO. But I think the only thing, I think that was the reason that at the end I was confused what I want to do, and I was not very sure which role I want to be in. So I would say, I mean, for you, I would just say that, okay, don't try to learn from that experience, because that is very haphazard. It would, for you, it would be better if you just like intern as one role, because if you're interning as a PM, then you will get all the chance to work as a PM and you'll get to interact with a lot of PMs. I think that would help you more than in making your decision than just like trying to understand what my role was.
So basically try both of them and then you can tell which one you like better.
Yeah, that's the main idea.
That's good insight. If anyone else has a question and isn't sure if they want to speak, you can raise your hand or you can drop it in the chat as well and we can pick it up from there. So I did have one question. I was wondering, are there any skills or just like technologies that you think students should learn right now in the meantime, like before the next recruitment season, or even like right now before you submit an application, that you can add to your resume that might stand out for like a PM internship, like SQL or anything that you think really stands out on a resume?
Yes, I have one good answer to that actually. So you can, yeah, as you mentioned, yes, you should definitely learn SQL. It comes really handy when you are working as a PM, because as a PM, one of the work that you do is data analysis. So I would say maybe you can learn any data analysis tools, maybe Tableau, or maybe, yeah, Tableau is fine. I mean, at Microsoft, I got to learn Power BI. That's what I was using there. And I figured that, okay, if I would have learned some data analysis earlier, then it would have been easy for me. So all the elements of data analysis, like basic statistics and the visualizations, if you can learn those things, it would be easy. And for your tool, you can mention Tableau. I think Tableau should be fine. Or maybe you can explore some tools.
Okay.
So there are few short courses on edX. I think I was doing that. Maybe later I can share the link on the Slack. But there are very short courses on Coursera or edX that you can check. Even on the LinkedIn Learning, there are few courses which are kind of bite-sized courses about being a product manager. So you get to know everything that you should be knowing. So maybe I think if you take one of those courses, it should help. I mean, so there is like UI UX design is one part of the product management that you should learn. And also, yeah, data analysis is one part. And another is if you can understand something about marketing and finance, that would help you. So if you have some time, you can learn something about that.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I've never heard like marketing and finance would be good prep for PM interviews. So that's great insight. And
I
then,
mean, so when they ask you to maybe design a project or assess a project, I think if you show your insight into marketing and
yeah.
finance, that would be on your plus side.
Okay. There's also a question in the chat. Aman is asking, besides interview prep, what interpersonal skills or patterns do you think we should absolutely learn?
First of all, one of the most important thing is that you should not be afraid of talking to people. As a PM, you are going to spend more than half your day in meetings. So, I mean, one of the interviewer asked me that if you are, I mean, he just asked me that about my presentation. If you have a final presentation, what would you like more, to do it in person, or you just want to record it and other people can say in their time? And I said, I would prefer to do it in person. And he said, okay, this is how I can figure if you are good fit for PM or for SDE. So I think one thing is that you should not be able to, I mean, you should be able to talk to people. That is, I think if you can do that, other things just become easy. And another skill,
Maybe just like communication all around.
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think something other than communication. That, yeah, it always comes to communication if you're working as a PM. But other than, okay, I would say that just have a general knowledge of about the products in general. You should have some opinion about all the products. I mean, you don't have to know everything in deep, but if you know something, so I mean, okay, currently if you visit LinkedIn these days, everyone is posting those Google icons image where they're comparing the old and the new, and they're asking for your opinion. I mean, something of that kind. So I think that would, like, if you, when you're meeting for the PM club, you can just discuss one product uh, at in every meeting. I think that would help you. Like, that is very common question in the interviews or in general when you're meeting another PM. They ask you that, what product do you like the most? I kind of always say Google Maps because I like that. I think you know the reasons why I might like that. So you should like have kind of some your favorite products, and that you should be able to justify why they are better than others. So I think having a general knowledge of the products that companies have would, I think, in help.
Mhm. Yeah, I had a question. So, you mentioned your shift from, a software engineer to a PM.
Mhm.
What do you wish that you had known before, sort of taking your first management role?
Yeah, data analysis.
Data analysis?
Yes, I mean, I actually had a hard time during my internship because when every time they used to say that you have to prove your hypothesis, and my mind was always going toward the statistical hypothesis testing, where I was thinking about the p-test and t-test. But that's what not they meant. They just meant by that I should have a question and I should try to prove it by data. So I should be
I
able to
see.
show the visualizations and the compare like 2-3 important elements of that. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
And I think we have a question in the chat, and it's actually a really interesting one. So, how was your experience as a program manager intern at Microsoft? And what does a typical workday look like as a PM? So maybe you could walk us through, like, I walk into work at 8 a.m. in the morning, and then da 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 da.
Okay, yeah. So I never walked into my work at 8 a.m. in the morning, and fortunately, my office was in West Coast and I was at East Coast, so that worked for my advantage. so so basically, most part of my work day was about meetings. So my team was actually, they had a different work. They were all PMs, but their work was more about process management, where they were dealing with the bug bounty programs that Microsoft offers. So for me, they created a few projects that involved developing something from scratch. So for their work, they were using dashboards. So every member of the team, they had a different dashboard for their own use, and my project was to create a dashboard that everyone can use. Basically, the plan was that if someone new is joining the team, they should be able to use that dashboard to finish their day-to-day works. So first thing that uh, I mean, basically, so basically, it was like developing a small feature for any product. So first thing that I or anyone have to do is to basically learn why do you need that dashboard and what should be on the dashboard. So first 2 weeks, I spent almost like 4 or 5 hours of my day talking to the different team members, and not from only from my team, from the other teams also, just to understand what I have to build and why is that important. So these meetings were like one-to-one, where I used to set up like 30 minutes of time. And other than that, I had like team meetings and like multiple team meetings with different teams that they used to call me. So first 2 weeks were like meetings. And when you talk to any PM, that's what they're going to say, that most of your work is meetings. So if you find, that's what I'm saying, that if you find talking to people hard, then maybe you should consider your choices about being a PM. So initial 2 weeks, I was just trying to understand the product that I have to build. Then next 2 weeks, I actually built that product. And so then basically, when you develop any product in general, even when you are doing anything for a course project, what we usually do is that we do it iteratively. So I mean, if you don't do in your coursework, which is quite possible, I know most of us start working in the last 2 weeks, but if you're doing at your workplace, I would always suggest to do it as an iterative process. Build something, then take the feedback, and then build something. I think this is one of the things that is very important to succeed as a PM intern or even as a full-time employee. So because the product that you have in mind and the product the others are looking for, they might be very different. And if you're taking the feedback at the last moment, that would actually be very bad for your growth. So that is one advice. And that is something that I learned practically there, because when I took multiple feedbacks, I was able to create a good product that they're still using. And the second part of my project was the data analysis thing that I keep saying about. So they basically asked me to kind of analyze that which kind of so there are multiple type of submitters that submit bugs into bug bounty programs. Some are individual researchers and some are companies. So my work was to find who are more riskier. So, and how to avoid the risk of making the bugs public. So it was basically like I was given some data which was really the quality of data was really bad. Most of the fields were missing, and then I was asked to analyze. And that's when I had a hard time because I don't know how to deal with the data. And eventually I finished it. And that was the time when I actually learned the importance of feedback, because the first draft of my data analysis was really bad and ugly looking, but the end product was good. So, and also, this part also involved meeting a lot of people. So that is common, that you'll be meeting a lot of people, and you will do better job if you take feedback from different people. So I think that's how I spent my 12 weeks of internship.
Yeah, I had another question. You mentioned that you talked about data analysis a lot, and you talked about how important it is to quickly get out a product, right? You talked about iterations and getting feedback. What would you say is the most important like lesson or something that you have to know as an incoming PM? It can be like an intern, it can be in your job. Like, which one is it? Is it like going over a product really quickly? Is it getting customer feedback? And yeah, could you just elaborate on that a little bit more?
Okay, I think I would answer that as basically a lot. I mean, divide your day into chunks. Let's say you work for 8 hours, then maybe divide those 8 hours into chunks and try to do all those things simultaneously. I mean, just jumping into product and building something in a week and then asking for feedback, it might not be a very good idea, because then even you might feel that you should have uh, learned things first and maybe given your project a lot of thought than you actually gave. So okay, give me a few seconds to frame it properly.
No worries, take your time.
Okay, so I mean, you will have to learn how to optimize this. So you shouldn't try to jump into your project like very soon and just develop something and give, and you shouldn't also take like a long time to just work on your own. uh, I, I'm sorry, I'm not being very clear, but maybe what I do is that maybe like build on small part of your project in like those 3 hours of your time, and other 3 hours of time I choose to talk to different people and learn more about that system. So that way, even when I present a product to someone and it's not a very thoughtful project, I'll have some questions to ask about the system. And when they're giving me some feedback, I'll have more data to understand that.
I
So,
see. So it's
yeah.
all about learning and planning ahead, and it kind of depends on what exactly you're building.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true. I think you'll have to optimize that what is not too soon and what is not too late, that kind of thing. So in
Gotcha.
internship, so when they say 12 weeks, it's actually not 12 weeks. It's kind of, they expect you to work on finish your project in 8 weeks and then spend next 4 weeks just preparing your presentation and uh, creating the final deliverable. So, but when you're working full time, the projects are long, so expectations might be different. So it depends on case to case basis.
I see. Yeah.
So do you have any tips for the Microsoft interview or application process? I'm sure there's a bunch of students who have like applied before and like never really heard back. So what do you think stands out when you're submitting your application or you're submitting your resume?
Okay, so honestly speaking, first of all, my case is, I think, is like not slightly a lot different than yours, because I already had a lot of work on my resume. So basically, for application, I would say I just applied. I have not given it much thought. But what happened? I had my first round on campus. So usually Microsoft does its first round on campus. So one of the representatives comes there and they take 30-minute interview of yours. So that was the time. Last year, the posting was common for PM and SDE. I'm not sure how this time, like how it is this time, but they were asking the question then and there if you want to be a SDE or a PM. So for us, it was like that. And with me, by my experience, the interviewer said that he want to test me for PM because he's liking my profile for that more. Even though I was saying I want to try SDE, he said no, I would prefer this. So one thing that I would say is that if you can write, if you have projects where you have worked as PM, then I think that would help you to get your resume shortlisted. So for that, I actually had one idea which I want to convey here. I think in University of North Carolina, or sorry, I don't remember the university name exactly, but they have that kind of thing where in their PM club they actually tie up with startups and do projects for them. So that's how they get some real experience and they get something to put on their resume. Because it's a bit hard to get interviews as fresher, like if you're applying for PM. So your best bet is to, I think, apply for APM and RPM. Uh, these are basically rotational programs, because usually PM roles are very specific. If you see the job descriptions, they are about, they are looking for PMs in payment systems or in the security. So one thing would be to put projects, and you'll have to figure out how you can do more projects. I think Dhruv has been working as a PM on campus. You should ask this question to him. So yeah, that is one thing that you should do. I'm sorry, I don't have very straight answers to all of your questions.
No, these are great. I mean, there's no like ABC perfect answer, but this is really, really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, because I think because my resume was very different than all of yours. So yeah, okay, sorry. That reminds me that how my interview went. So I want to give you an example that like you should be prepared for that. So my interviewer asked me some random questions about my resume. The general questions like what was your most challenging project, and like all those kind of things. And then next question he asked me that tell me about project that you are doing, academic project. And I was taking the applied information retrieval, and by that time I just done the first project that was to create inverted index. And they asked me, okay, so he asked me to explain that to a 3-year-old. He said, I have a 3-year-old daughter and you have to explain what an inverted index is to my 3-year-old. So they are going to ask you that kind of question. These are very like common questions in PM interviews. And all I could think of, because from the interview was in Goodell building and I was able to see the library from there, and I kind of created an analogy with the library and said something. So just be ready for these kind of questions. And the main is thing, that's what I was kind of suggesting when I was saying just be confident and ask clarifying questions. So I just started explaining things and I was just asking if I'm going on a right track or not. And I don't know what I said, but he was satisfied with it. So I think if you give it a thought and just keep speaking something, that should be fine. So, and
That's
on the
really interesting.
sorry.
That's really interesting. We have one more question in the chat. So someone was asking, how have you felt that your immigration status or just like being an immigrant has affected you at your interview for Microsoft or at like working at Microsoft? How has your experience been?
Honestly, if you're going for any large company, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple, it doesn't matter at all. I think they are used to of seeing so many international students. They don't treat you any different. So it's fine. I think you should worry about it maybe when you are interviewing for the very small companies or startups. So, and yeah, and another thing, one of things that might happen to you when you tell someone about that you're applying for PM roles, and they might tell you that, okay, you might not qualify for H1B because it's different than your field of study. Don't listen to them, because I think in my MS batch, I was the only one who interned as PM, and everyone kept saying me that because it's not related to your field of study, you won't get H1B. So don't be scared of those people. If any large company like Microsoft is taking you, they know how to handle your case.
That's awesome. I think that's all the questions that we had today, unless anybody else. Do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, awesome. If no one else has any more questions, thank you so much for joining us today. This was greatly helpful. Um, I took a lot out of it. I believe everyone else did as well. Yeah, but if you need to contact Kriti, you can always contact her at the information that she gave. You can also share the slides that she was talking about earlier. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you for inviting me here. I mean, I know that I might not have been able to answer all of your questions properly, because there are some things that I have not actually explored. Yeah, but as Dhruv said, and I also said, that you can contact me anytime and I'll try to help you as best as possible. I will try to connect you to the other people who have gone through this. Yeah, also I want to say something. I think someone posted about that, how do I keep up with the technology? I don't know, I read that question somewhere. So okay, maybe this time consider me as a member of your PM club, and we are just having an informal discussion. So I basically tried to join multiple Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups. And also I subscribed to many newsletters, but honestly, I didn't get much time to check it out. I'm planning to do in December. So if you find, like, you can also try experimenting with different like newsletters or maybe the Facebook group, and they kind of sometimes do random things like they form a small group to talk about any product or something. So if you want to do that, maybe you can just explore that. And if I like anything, if I like any newsletter, I'll definitely share it in the Slack. So you can do that. Or maybe you can create maybe small projects on your own and just work on that.
Definitely. I think that's one of our goals for the club as we go ahead into the spring semester, is to have like these small projects so that other people in the club can like have like a good experience about what it's like to work on these like small PM things, like small feature products, everything else.
Yes, I think that would be great, because I think, as we already spoke, that in our university we have a really less exposure to the product management. Even in our business school doesn't have courses about it. So I think you'll have to do it on your own, and maybe try to find the alumni who are working as PMs in industry for some time. So I think that should be able to help you.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice for the club going forward, because that's how we plan to like grow the club as we go into like remote learning and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to share as many resources as I find, because I am also kind of exploring this, and this is something that I got into very recently. So I will just share it, whatever I come across and I like.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
So what do you usually like discuss